Welcome to our new podcast in the series, which we are actually taking for the celebration of 100 years of diplomatic relationships between Finland and Switzerland. We already made a podcast about culture, we made a podcast about research and innovation, and now we are doing a podcast about business and economics. And when we think about who could be our best partner in the podcast for talking about business and economics in Finland and in Switzerland, then there is one person. It's Timo Ihamuotila, long-time CFO of ABB and new chairman of the board of Nokia. Thank you, Timo, for joining us, and
thank you for doing this. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Being part of this podcast. So you are one of the most internationally experienced Finnish business leader. So, and you have spent almost 10 years here in Switzerland. So how would you, what would you tell about being here in Switzerland, about differences between Finland and Switzerland? So when you came here, what did you notice first as a difference to Finland?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've actually worked pretty much always in a very international circumstance. So in that sense, there are of course differences, but when you come here and you work for ABB in the executive team, so it's a little bit of a bubble in a way. But of course, coming to Switzerland, you notice some differences. For me personally, actually, what has been most fascinating is how beautiful the summers in Switzerland are, because I only visited in winter. I'm a keen skier and I have skied here a lot before we moved here, but it really is a beautiful surrounding. And also Switzerland now, when I moved here, is a lot more international than it was when I did some work here, say 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So if I understand correctly, in the Zurich area, almost 30% of the people actually who live here are with some kind of international background.
So you feel then mostly international, or you feel already a little bit Swiss, or still Finnish? So how would you think about yourself? How you, or how have you become here in Switzerland?
Yeah. Besides Finland, I've lived quite a while both in the UK as well as in the US. So I would sort of maybe think about myself as an international Finn. But now, of course, 9 years in Switzerland have formed me. So nowadays, I would sort of introduce myself as a Finn who has lived 9 years in Switzerland.
So what were your first impressions and surprises when you came here? So positive and negative ones?
I don't think I've had that many sort of negative surprises, but I think a positive surprise to me was that I think Swiss and Finnish people are culturally actually quite close. So both value nature, both value a little bit of privacy. So I've been actually surprised how many people in different professions, when I've said that I'm originally from Finland, have been like, wow, we really like Finland, and then they tell about their experiences with Finland and that kind of stuff. So that's been actually a positive surprise.
And any negative surprises? Shops closed on Sundays, for example.
Well, actually that's a good one, because that was first a bit of a negative surprise, but then my family and we have actually started to like it, because it sort of gives you like ruetagi. So
Exactly.
yeah, so you know that one day you kind of like prepare and then you do other stuff. And we also really like that, for example, the restaurants are all open here on Sundays.
That's good, yeah. Historically, Switzerland and Finland have been built on reputation around competence and trust. Are these still competitive advantages in today's polarized world?
I think they very much are. And I think that's exactly the point which unites these countries. Again, having lived in different countries and environments, it's fairly unique that you come to a place and you kind of like go to a shop and then you order something and then they say, we'll just send you a bill. And that happens in Switzerland. That also happens in Finland. So this trust-based culture is very important because it gives speed. You know that, when something is agreed verbally, by contract, what have you, at least initially, unless something goes like wrong, it will also hold.
Okay. On the business side, on the leadership side, so when you compare Finnish and Swiss leadership styles, do you see their common things or differences? So Swiss business culture, for example, is often described as precise, consensus-driven, and cautious, while Finnish culture values speed, pragmatism, and flat hierarchies. So what have been your experience also in Switzerland, in Finland, but also worldwide when you have
Yeah. So again, here I don't think there is that big of a difference when you are working in an international company. But I would say that I've been sitting also in a Swiss board and of course been part of different teams. Maybe in Switzerland, I sometimes use this sort of how do organizations work in a balance between trusting and verifying stuff. And Finland, I would say, is even more trust-based, sometimes even too much, because you actually have to verify. Whereas Switzerland is a little bit more sort of verification-based, and sort of there is certain documentation stuff needs to happen in a certain way before one moves forward. But I think these are sort of probably narrowing these kind of differences.
Finnish startups are very well known for being innovative, but they are not good in marketing. Do you see that as well? That Finnish startups should also be more promoting themselves and having the courage to tell about.
But I think actually some Finnish startups are. But I think culturally both Swiss and Finnish companies are probably more sort of they create first a product or service and then start the marketing journey, which actually is not a bad practice. I think it's sort of then nuanced. So then when you know that your stuff is in a way, let's call it good enough to expand and scale, then one should go fast. But of course, also kind of like not totally overblown by possible risk of expansion. But I think both Finland and Switzerland have really a good technology base, good sort of technology engineering schools, and maybe compared to I don't know, maybe some Swedish companies who actually go faster and probably both could learn a little bit from that.
When you came here to Switzerland to ABB, to a technology engineering company, could you bring something from Finland with you to the company?
Actually, I'll now generalize a little bit. I'm not talking about myself and ABB, but Finns are actually quite well valued as people who are sort of diligent and hardworking and don't sort of drop the ball in between. And maybe some of that is things which sort of hopefully I have been bringing a little bit in and also, of course, contributing to the company's recent, let's call it, at least reasonable performance.
Now you're moving to Nokia as a chairman. So what will you bring from Switzerland to the Nokia board?
Well, again, it's hard to say what I bring from Switzerland, but of course, a lot of the learnings, what I have accumulated during my career, including things here at ABB, I will try to, of course, utilize for the benefit of Nokia in my new role there.
Now, generally speaking, both Finland and Switzerland are high-cost countries that rely on productivity rather than on volume. So what does competitiveness really mean for such economies in 2026 and beyond? So how would you change the regulatory environment if you had the power to do so?
Yeah, tough to talk about the regulatory environment, but if we think about, let's call it a high-cost country or a country where basically in any given profession cost of labor is very high, then you have to drive with innovation, adapting new technologies all the time, and that way you can get the productivity. And there are interesting examples, actually, both in Finland and in Switzerland. If you think about the watchmaking in Switzerland, so it's very high quality, precision type of work. But equally, for example, in Finland, when you look at some of the boat companies, international companies on the west coast of Finland, like I don't know, Swan and Baltic Yachts and Targa and the ecosystem there. It's a very similar thing. You really make a high quality product, and that kind of things, of course, we should both countries think about where you do it more, and then scaling with technology where it's possible is always important in these kind of environments.
There's a very nice example about the boats produced in Finland. So the Swiss Army purchased Finnish boats for their navy on the Swiss lakes. There are
Okay.
also some police forces which use
Yeah, these must
Finnish
be
boats.
the Targa boats.
Exactly.
But equally a similar thing is, for example, ABB has a very large presence in Finland, over 5,000 people, and many of them are doing very high-end manufacturing in the field of electrification in particular.
Looking globally, so artificial intelligence, sustainability, and geopolitical risks are reshaping our world. So where do you think the Nordic and the Swiss business culture have a genius edge?
I think this kind of like goes back to this really trust-based culture and willingness to employ new technologies and embrace new technologies fast. I think these are really some of the key attributes.
Regarding innovation, you mentioned ABB as innovative company, and also there is ETH Zurich, which is one of the leading Central European universities in innovation. Also, Finland is very well known for the technical innovation they are doing. So, how do you see the possibilities that our two countries can support each other and develop together innovation for Europe and for the world?
Yeah, if I understand, there is quite a bit of university cooperation, both on technical side, but also I know that there is also, for example, between Aalto University and St. Gallen, there is sort of a lot of cooperation. And I think these areas of kind of like how do you adapt AI, for example, in pharma, could be a great opportunity where both countries have competencies. Similar is probably in the AI and robotics or AI in defense industries. So I think this is a really, these are many interesting areas where the countries and the universities can cooperate and work on the startup scene. But of course, I'm not that close to it. So these are more like conceptual thoughts.
How about digitalization? Finland is very digitalized. Here in Switzerland, maybe the digitalization a little bit lacks. So, from your personal view in daily life, how do you see it, and how do you see it on the business side, the future in the digitalization?
Well, in business side, I don't see that much difference, but you are right. Maybe more sort of on personal side, yeah, when you operate in different levels of the Swiss system, there is a lot more paper being sort of involved in your daily life than would be the case, for example, in Finland.
So we are actually much involved also in the healthcare digitalization, where Finland is actually leading.
Yeah.
So we are trying to showcase also how a digital healthcare system can work and support also innovation and research with databases from that digital health environment and ecosystem.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting, of course.
So when you have young professionals today, which are more mobile than maybe our generation, when we started to study at the university, so what advice would you give a young Finn considering a career in Switzerland, or a Swiss professional looking northward?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I'm the right person to give advice to different people, but I would just maybe say that whatever you do it for the right reason. So basically, if you go somewhere, go there to learn, to contribute, to live, and at least I've always done so with our family, and we have discussed that with my wife Rika as well, that when we move somewhere, then we move there and we live there. And we don't know when something else comes up. So we have not gone anywhere ever so that we say we will stay here for 3 years or we will stay here for XYZ. And I think then that also gives you a basis to kind of like build your life there, even if then, you know, you would happen to move to some other place in the future. So at least that sort of worked for us pretty well, because then you try to at least integrate.
I remember from my time at university, though, it was much more complicated. Going abroad, studying in another university, and nowadays when you look on the young students, so with Erasmus programs, it's so easy to go to another country. And I suggest everyone I know who's studying, go for a half a year somewhere abroad, and take that different environment with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I misunderstood. I was thinking more about kind of like really sort of moving into the country, but of course those opportunities are super valuable. And same, of course, for all kinds of summer trainings and all that. I remember I went to Germany for a summer training before Finland became part of EU, and the paperwork was just tremendous. And now you can just do that. You just drop in and start.
So now I think we are already coming soon to an end of this podcast. So when you are looking about life technology today, how do you see it in the next 10, 15 years? Now AI coming to reshape our world. When we studied, we still were reading books. We went to a library.
I hope people still are reading books. I think it's actually quite healthy. At least I try to encourage my kids with sort of so success to do that.
But in a way, things happen so fast. 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about artificial intelligence. Now I'm using myself as well. How do you predict the future? How will work look like? Will we have engineers doing the same like today? Will they do it differently?
I'm sure we will have engineers and we will have many other professions which we have currently, but of course they will utilize these tools to do the work. And when we spoke about productivity, AI probably is the one of the biggest innovations in productivity, and probably during that kind of time frame, 10, 15 years, AI combined with some physical format of, let's call it things like robotics, or if you think about self-driving cars. So there will be a lot further productivity enhancements. But I really think it's both the people, companies, and countries which embrace these tools will be the people who will sort of, or will be the, will be the people who foster in this new environment.
How do you see it on the environment and, let's say, energy side? So we are actually moving from fossil fuel to green energy next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, it couldn't happen fast enough. So I, of course, having lived, say, 50 years ago, 40 years ago in southern Finland, so I can see that the climate change, of course, is real. So whoever says otherwise is like, I don't know what to think about that. And we really need these tools, all of them, on the energy transition, meaning that it can't happen overnight, but it means that we need to increase solar, wind, all the, let's call it clean energies, but equally we need to embrace nuclear, and we also need to use more and more natural gas as a transition fuel, because the energy or electricity consumption in the world will continue to grow up.
Now, coming back to our main theme, that's Finland and Switzerland, 100 years of diplomatic relations. You now, as a Finn in Switzerland, as a global Finn in Switzerland, looking now back to your 9 years or even more here with connection to our country, how on a personal side, you mentioned nature, for example, which you liked here, but what takes you back to Finland when you are going there? So what do you miss from Finland?
Well, first of all, I miss rye bread. That's very clear. So we always bring it when we go a little bit back and forth. But of course, we actually have a place in the Finnish archipelago, and that is like a really, really important environment for us. So when people ask about my hobbies, I usually say skiing and an archipelago. Those are like the two things, because I really like to be on the water, and that's really a place to sort of get energy and recuperate and that kind of stuff. So we go back every summer for that particular experience especially. But of course also a lot of extended family and friends we have in Finland.
So nature is something also which connects our two countries here. And my last question, a book, a habit, or an experience, Finnish or Swiss, that shaped your leadership?
Well, I would actually say that the book that has really shaped my leadership is an old sort of classic business book called Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma, which talks about renewal. And that is, I think, still very, very relevant. So it talks about how you have to sort of renew from inside of a company. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to stay competitive, especially when there are technology shifts happening in the market. But then maybe mentioning a Finnish book, this Mr. Matti Alahuhta's a book about leadership. I think it's in Finnish called Johtajuus. And it talks a lot about how you can create sort of, I call it clarity and positive energy in a company. Because if you can give people clarity on the direction and what is expected from them, and that's of course not that easy if you have 100,000 people or whatever working for the company. But if you can do that and you can do it in a way which also energizes them, then usually good things happen in business.
So thank you very much, Timo, for this podcast, and we wish you all the best for your new position as a chairman of Nokia.
Thank you.
We hope we still keep you here in Switzerland also and see you quite often then.
At least currently, that is the plan as well, Jordi. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.